We're going to show a 13-minute video that was created after the sacred fire happened. So we had filmmakers and photojournalists and people that would show up at the site. Our most valuable filmmaker is Auntie Doreen. She's sitting right here, making more films. Yeah. Go Auntie Doreen. So she put together a lot of sort of short clips for us to release as we went along during the encampment, and put together this masterpiece as well that does a really good job of sort of pulling together all the different strings that were the Yukna-Sing-Kaimekwa encampment, as well as sort of some of the little bits of expertise that we were utilizing as we were sort of learning about this disaster. So 13 minutes film, it's a really wonderful one. Enjoy.
We were the first ones to get the phone call about 3 in the morning. The employee who works there was scared about their job, but they knew somebody had to say something, because he feared that management won't say anything till the next day. So phoned his wife, and then his wife phoned us, so we got the call about 3 in the morning. We got in the jet boat and went up there, and we were first on scene, and we took all the pictures and videos.
We got some more water coming down now, about 3 feet high, not like a small river.
It's still going, yeah.
Check it out, man. Okay, great. Let's go to a little bit of safety. Throttle!
Well, Hazelton Creek used to just be a couple feet across.
Now, there is a 200-foot wide, 30-foot deep canyon just covered in tailings sludge where Hazelton Creek used to be. So the tailings came into the Polley Lake, ripped down Hazelton Creek, ripping it apart into Quesnel Lake.
It was thousands upon thousands of trees, and mud and debris, and heavy metals came flashing down. I think just seeing the picture here, there's trees and leaves, and almost looking like Mount St. Helens to me. It just devastated and scarred that whole area. From that forest, the trees there was one tree sticking way out 200 feet from shore, straight up and down. So like the force of everything coming down must have just embedded right in, eh?
Visiting Hazelton Creek, where these tailings had fallen down, I thought, this is as close to hell as we get on Earth. You didn't want to touch anything. You didn't want to breathe. You didn't want to sit down. You really didn't even want your shoes again. There was pieces of wood that had fallen into it, and all that was left was a burn mark. Cedar branches where all the needles are burnt off, and just the wood is left. You can imagine when this thing hit, there must have been a wind associated with it. It was just a wall of water that came for 6 hours. And so this woman that lives across, she was showing me the mountain ash on her property, and the trees that would have taken the face of that, their berries were black and their leaves were dropping off.
What really made me upset was when they changed the Water Act in 2001 or 19. I have the date. They changed it. As soon as they get a permit to release the water into a creek, it becomes an unnatural water source. So they actually lobbied behind our backs, through Parliament or whatever they do, and made this new law. So once they get that okay to release water there, it becomes an unregulated water source. Fisheries and oceans, no one can say nothing anymore. Even if there's fish in there, it becomes declassified. The lake has changed color now. They use fancy words that you can't eat the liver and stuff, but okay, if it's already in the guts of fish in 14 days, well, what's going to be next? And what's going to be in the bears in the fall time after they eat all this? The chain reaction is horrendous here.
There's over 100 species in British Columbia that eat salmon. The moment the egg leaves the mother's body, salmon starts feeding the world. As they grow, there's animals out in the open ocean, other fish and sharks. The system is so remarkable in that when a bear grabs a salmon and he eats it and then he wanders off in the woods and he gets rid of what he ate, other things grow. You can measure how big a salmon run is by the growth rings of the trees.
We went there firsthand to witness an account and survey the damage of the spill. Hazeltine Creek is a 9-kilometer long creek. It used to be a creek, but now it's filled with gorges and 30-feet canyons, and the whole basin of what used to be that creek is full of toxic sludge. It's very unstable. I got sucked into that sludge past my knees.
We need to appreciate and always respect this area. The name that was given to the area closest to the spill is called Yuht ne Senhaimetkwa. Yuht means that's where our salmon are born. Sen means the greatest. Metkwa means a big lake and water. The Quesnel Lake area is a sacred area for our people.
It's very toxic, full of mercury and arsenics and a whole bunch of different types of heavy metals that are not good for human consumption or the health and safety of our water. During our Yukina Senkai Metkwa camp, I also talked to some Japanese doctors and scientists that were in Grassy Narrows documenting the mercury poisoning there and the Minamoto disease there. In the tailings facility, throughout the 5 years data that we have, there was 2.6 tons of mercury in that tailings pond.
Wow. で、そのテーリングポンドに、この、5年間のデータがそれについてあるんですが、2.6 トンの水銀が入ってた。その中に。Yes?
And we need some opinion and some expert advice on how that is going to impact the people of the area and the salmon.
それでこの 2.6 トンの水銀が流出してしまうとなると、その地域の人々にどのような健康が流通ということはないので、様子を見ながらっていう話です。Obviously, people must stop using the water from that area, and the fish has to be monitored regularly.
How far can this go down on the watershed? How far can this travel? The mercury.
これはYou have to be very careful in the areas within 100 kilometers from the sailing pond, for sure. And about the rest, it very much depends on the speed of the current, how the river is shaped, and so on.
After setting up this encampment and monitoring checkpoint, it became a command post for not only Secwepemc people but for the likely residents, to offer them a time to say how they felt, to say what happened on that day and the aftermath of the spill. One of the main key issues that is faced right now is that there is no clean drinking water for likely. The province has lifted their ban and said that they can drink the water if it doesn't show no cloudiness or turbidity or doesn't have no smell. So they're giving the option to drink that water.
Since this tailings impoundment breach, the residents likely still do not feel safe drinking the water. The confusion of being told the water is safe, yet do not drink it when it's cloudy, is very upsetting. We question, what about our future? Will the one to Quesnel Lake be safe again? Quesnel Lake has now, in the last week, changed color. It's green. It's never been that color. Christy Clark did come to Likely, and at that time she informed us that she would make sure that Quesnel Lake would be brought back to its pristine state. We haven't seen or heard from her since.
I think, and I absolutely believe that what we're faced with here is the consequence of negligence on the part of the Government of Canada and the Province of British Columbia with their deliberate efforts to completely deregulate industry and take away all regulatory oversight. And that applies across the board. And that's why we fought so hard against Bill C-38 and C-45. So I'm sure this is not lost on industry and the proponents of heavy oil pipelines, LNG. There isn't a household in the province of British Columbia, and certainly Indigenous households, that don't wake up every morning thinking about the consequences, the long-term consequences of the Mount Polley spill. And it's just unacceptable for the province and other governments to engage issues that are long on process and short on substance.
British Columbia needs to step up right now because the mining industry is watching this. And if they get away with this, it's going to be open season on British Columbia for mining.
At this point, looking at the mining regulations sector, looking at how the provincial government is or is not regulating mining, it is important to know that there are other nations, other countries that are regulating their mines appropriately, that we are not the leader, any kind of leader in this kind of sector. And if this is the way, if this is the precedent that we are setting for how mining disasters or other large resource extraction disasters are going to be responded to, it's a bad precedent. This is a very bad precedent. This means that in the future, and there will be a future if this continues, there will be no drinking water for those that are affected. This means that there will be no adequate testing. Mount Polley itself will not be doing any kind of cleanup, they say, until spring, so they still have to pump that lake down. So this is a bad precedent to be setting for the mining sector, for resource extraction.
The Chilcotin River hits Fraser, and that's where our concern is. And that salmon that travels, that contamination that's coming down, and what I hear, I just feel that the government is downplaying it, and I'm pretty concerned about that.
It doesn't just hurt here. I'm from Lillooet, Staten territory. This is the main food for our people down there, and it's coming up here. And we don't know what's going to happen to our fish. You know, everybody should be concerned. What impacts one impacts all.
You know, the loss of the salmon for us as Secwepemc is a matter of life or death of our culture. Just have a question. Can our salmon survive this devastation?
You know, stewards of the land and the things that we've been tasked with from Creator, to look after the land, and that's why we're here.
We have rights and we have title because of Mother Earth, not because we deserve it, because she is providing for us and we have to look after her. And we have to exercise our right to manage these lands. And we should be coming up with a plan on how to fix this mess that they've done, because it doesn't seem like anybody else is.
We demand that there's a meaningful cleanup, that the province and the federal government need to be involved. Right now, the Prime Minister has not made any type of formal comment or apology to the people of Likely, that the people of Likely have no clean drinking water, which is a human right protected under our international laws, that the Imperial Metals must halt all of their other developments, including the Root Creek project, which is also in our territory, and the headwaters to the Adams River. We cannot afford a disaster like this to happen in another watershed and the world's largest sockeye salmon run. We'd just like to thank Auntie Doreen for making this. We've been using this on all our presentations. After being there on the site there for 14 days, we broke camp, and we don't say that the fire went out because the fire spread, and it spread to other places, including the Tahltan blockade right now. But from the time that we broke down camp there, our goal was to go to as many communities and inform as many people about the truth about Mount Polley. So we went to Nisconlith and Chase, Kamloops, here Vancouver, one of the universities, and we, where else did we go? We went to the salmon convergence this past weekend at the Adams River sockeye salmon spawning grounds, and we were invited up to the Tahltan territory, up with the Tahltan elders, the Klabona keepers, requested us to go up there to give the truth about Mount Polley. What happened in the Tahltan territory, and I was hoping that Loretta Knoll was going to be here, she could speak on it. She was on the first original blockade that they set up at the Red Chris Imperial Metals mine 4 days after the spill happened. They set up a blockade. They set up 2 blockades to block access to the Red Chris workers into the site. And they end up pulling down the blockade so they could regroup as a nation and get more people out onto the blockade. So they asked us to go there. We did a presentation to a packed hall in Iskut, which is the closest community, 18 kilometers from the site. Red Chris is 18 kilometers from Iskut. So what happened when we went there was that the next day they wanted to reestablish their blockades because they don't want to see this happen in their territory. The people rely very, very heavily on the moose meat, the caribou meat, porcupine, gophers, sheep. They eat this every day. When we went there, they have caribou and sheep hanging in their smoker. That's what we were fed there every day, even breakfast. We had moose mush. And so when we went there, the elders cried. And they said when we talked that first night when we came in, they said we brought the northern lights with us because the sky was full of northern lights the night we pulled in. We pulled into the entrance, they call it the turn-off entrance, and this entrance is to this area of this camp. It has been there since 2005, 2006, when the elders got arrested blocking Shell. And I'm not sure, it made a lot of media attention back then, but they had stopped Shell, and the elders are very, very, very powerful and strong up there. And so that camp was still maintained all of that time, and every hunting season they block off resident hunters, American hunters, different hunters that are going there to just kill the moose and take the head, or kill the sheep and take the head, and they leave the carcasses laying out there. So every year they have blockades, and that's the blockade that we went and stayed at. And then so the day after we did the presentation, they kept on saying, when are you leaving, when are you leaving? And we're like, oh, well, we don't want to just come here and leave, but we do have to continue and do the work that we committed to. And they said, okay, well, be ready in 2 hours. We're going to go set up this blockade, and we're going to light this fireplace. They call it the grandmother's fireplace. So we got all packed up, everything in the vehicles and everything, and literally I didn't know how far it was, and it was just right down the road. It was like 2 kilometers down the road, and then we turned in there, and everybody just loaded everything up and lit the fire. And did you want to show that real quick? I'm not sure if people got to see this video, but it's just really short. It's, how long is it? 3 minutes or something. If something were to happen like Mount Polley here, our livelihood will be gone. Not only, it'll affect the fish, because the tailend spawn the tailends then will run into Japan, and Japan goes into Stikine. So it'll affect our fish, but not only the fish, it'll affect our bears, our moose, and our caribou, and that's our livelihood. And our people. Red Chris is only 18 kilometers from the Iskut community.
So we're the ones going to be impacted when the tailings pond break.
And we always hear, oh, you can't stop the companies. How much money they have invested. What about us? What about how much of our lives we invested into our land? How come they could come and take that away from us?
This is Tim Fish.
Oh, from Mount Polley.
Yeah.
Well, currently Red Chris, but yes, I was in Mount Polley. So, can I ask the purpose of the roadblock?
Read the sign behind you.
Okay.
You guys invest a lot of money into your company. We invest our lives into our area.
Okay.
We don't want another Mount Polley.
You want to have some water?
I'll be more than happy to talk to you guys tomorrow, but not today.
This is Mount Polley's water. Could you have a drink on me?
Not today. Thanks.
All tailings impoundment areas are bad. No Indigenous people want it.
We'll be back tomorrow.
It's not going to happen at Rudolph Creek. It's not going to happen here.
Liar.
There's no consent.
Liar.
I'm here at the sacred fire that was lit here by the people, the Plebono keepers, the Taltan people, to stop the Red Chris Imperial Metals mine. We come here in solidarity from the Indigenous people of the Secwepemc territory to help, to act on a call to action, to come and help so we can shut down this mine. We're dealing with Rudolph Creek mine in our headwaters. We just came from the site of the Mount Polley disaster, and we're honored to come here and inform our relatives about the devastation, and that we're here to help any way we can to help protect this area, this beautiful land.
We need help here. We need help for other nations to stand beside us. This is very important. We need to save our land for our grandchildren's and our great-grandchildren's. And that includes you too, so please come out and help us. All nations, come stand with us. Thank you.
I would like to call out all the nations around BC and in Canada as well to join us as our sacred fire here, so that we could shut down Imperial Metals and not have another Mount Polley. I strongly recommend that you come, please. Help us, support us, come, take action with us. Thank you.
It's Kuna and it's two. Sally John, help us, Carly. Du det a condamnene to Rudolph Creek. And it's two sadly. So help us, please. Put a stop to this. It's to Sophie. Come, Greg. Sally John. Help us, God, live there.
Shut down Imperial!
Since this day, this fire is still lit. They call it in their language their grandmother's fireplace. What they said is that whatever nation, one of the young men said, like he said, I could go start a fire in Gitsan territory because that's my grandmother's fireplace. That's where she's always had her fireplace. So that's the significance behind that fire, is it's their grandmother's fireplace, and they have every right to do that for their prayers for the land. Since we left, they came with an injunction on them. So, they're filing for an injunction on Wednesday here in Vancouver if they get their way. Trying to mobilize right now and actually have a change of venue, so we don't know how that's going to work out, so they could have it up to Terrace so the elders could actually go. We have, there's another video that's online. It's actually them serving the injunction, and it was a really neat way that they did it. I'm not sure if you guys want to watch it. It's only like a little bit of minutes. But we also have the injunction right here, and it's sort of funny because they named me in the injunction too, as a Secwepemc. But they are scared because they mention in the injunction the Secwepemc. And it's important to note that we've had a ancient and a long-term alliance with the Tahltan as the interior indigenous nations, because in 1910, our interior tribes, they put forth a petition to the Prime Minister to state and declare that this is unceded, unsurrendered territories, and that we don't want the province coming and assuming that they have jurisdiction on our lands. And the Tahltan actually got word of that same declaration, and that's so far north. Even to this day, it takes a long, long time to get up there. So in 1910, that was a long way for them to travel, but they put forth the same declaration of unceded, unsurrendered. And the beginning, very first, it states that petition to the Prime Minister and our declaration in 1910. So since 1910, we know for sure that we had that alliance with them, and it could have dated before that too. So when we talk about nations uniting with other nations to fight government and to fight industry, they get very scared of that. And we didn't think they were going to come forth with an injunction so fast, because we thought that they don't want their name in the media smeared Mount Polley, Mount Polley. That's why we keep on saying this red kris has everything to do with Mount Polley. And it needs to be linked together, that Rudock Creek, Red Kris, Mount Polley. There's like the 2 other Imperial Metals mines over in Vancouver Island that they're trying to start. And even the Huckleberry mine, they don't have no consent either to be operating in Wet'suwet'en territory. So we're uniting with all these indigenous nations that are fighting against Imperial Metals. And I'd just like Anushka to talk a little bit about the injunctions, but one thing that we know that they've got injunctions on us many times before in our fight against Sun Peak Ski Resort. I was arrested and held in jail for 3 months while my baby was still nursing from me. Took my baby from me, threw me in jail for 3 months. I sat in there plotting and planning how I was going to continue to fight Canada and industry. But these elders are strong, and they're on the front lines. Like we say, strong hearts to the front, and they're on the front lines, and they're vowing that they're going to stay there and get arrested. And we never want to see our grandmothers get arrested, but they're there on the front lines. And so I just want, since Anushka is also our legal advocate, she could explain a little bit more. But one thing to mention is that injunctions and the way that the province uses injunctions and enforcement orders is their tool to displace Indigenous peoples from the territory. That's their weapon of choice in removing Indigenous people from their land. And so, I don't know, who do you want to answer? Can we answer questions right after? She's just going to talk real quick about the injunction.
Oh, yeah. So, again, it's very obvious that Imperial Metals as a corporation is panicking and is really, really trying to push their projects through. They are very much on the brink of extinction. And so at this point, what's happened here is on Friday afternoon, we received word that Imperial Metals may have applied for an injunction, and then we confirmed that word later on that day. And so the injunction itself very sneakily was applied for on Friday, so we wouldn't have time to respond to it Saturday, Sunday, and we would have to wait for Monday to actually be able to file anything. And it was also applied on what's called short leave, or notice for short leave. So that means that they applied saying, man, you got to hear this right away, because X, Y, or Z. And that short leave application was approved, which is why the injunction is being heard this Wednesday. So that's 2 days. It's being heard in BC Supreme Court after being served yesterday evening. So the way these injunctions work, there's two kinds of injunctions. One's an ex parte, and one's sort of just the regular kind of injunction, interim injunctions. An ex parte injunction can be served without notifying the other party, but the onus and the bar of evidence is higher on that kind of an injunction, and a regular injunction needs to be served on the other party. So this was served on Sunday evening. We're now at Monday, and we've spent now a lot of time, unfortunately, a lot of energy and a lot of time to strategize around what to do with this injunction and how to respond to it. This is not where we want to be putting our energy. We know that the courts have no jurisdiction, that they've never had any jurisdiction. We know that this is occupied territory, unceded and unsurrendered. And we especially know that after the Chilcotin decision, that the courts must follow their own precedent, and they cannot keep business as usual. This is not business as usual anymore. And so looking at sort of the injunction application, we had some very serious meetings yesterday with some lawyers and some legal advocates and representatives to try and strategize around what we were going to do. And the first thing that we were sort of thinking about was change of venue. So this is being applied for in Vancouver, again, strategically on the part of Imperial Metals Corporation, because Vancouver is a 22 to 24-hour drive away from Tahltan territory, and it really cuts off the ability for the Tahltan to come and represent themselves and support each other in fighting something this serious. And so we have basically started that process of changing the venue, and we also want to be applying for an adjournment on Wednesday at that injunction application. The issue that we're having here is that there's not enough time, and this is all very strategic on Imperial Metals Corporation. They're paying some lawyer out there, and I'm sure it says on here somewhere, some lawyer out there a lot of money to cover all of their sort of standard legal bases. This injunction is actually trying to preempt a second blockade on a second access road to Red Chris Mine as well, saying not only can you not have your blockade that's up right now, but you can't put up another one on this other road, which is generally sort of the second backup strategy. And on that second road is where the Tahltan have established a hunting blockade, and have established that hunting blockade for years. Because what happens up there in that territory is you have a lot of trophy hunters coming in from all over the place, including Alaska, to come in there and chop, kill their whatever they want, leave the heads behind, take the heads and leave the bodies behind. And so much so that elders and children and families in Tahltan territory, sometimes for years, don't get any game or don't get enough game to be feeding themselves again over the wintertime. So this is another blockade that the Tahltan have maintained for years. So it's a very serious issue. And one more thing that I wanted to also clear up in regards to the Tahltan blockade is some sort of misinformation or confusion that's going around about the Klabona Keepers and about what was signed between the Klabona Keepers and the Imperial Metals Corporation some time ago. I'm not sure if it's a couple of weeks now. I'm lost all track of time in the bush. But so there's a lot of confusion because some folks go up into these kinds of areas, and by these kinds of areas I mean Indigenous communities, especially Indigenous communities in resistance, and go up in there with very little understanding and awareness of what's actually going on and what has historically happened as well. And they troop on in there, create a bunch of mess, and troop on out, and then create a bigger mess wherever they're going around themselves and their communities. And that mess spreads, and it spreads really quickly. And so what's happened here is that what the Klabona Keepers signed is something called a letter of understanding. So it's not a contract, it's not an agreement, it's not anything, any of those things. It has very little legal weight. It's called a letter of understanding. In that letter of understanding, there is no mention that the Klabona Keepers must take down their blockade. There is no mention that the Klabona keepers are not allowed to re-establish a blockade or really do whatever they want. And there's no mention that the Klabona keepers have consented to allow Red Chris mine to continue. There is nothing in that letter. And if the person who actually, or the people who are actually creating this kind of mess around the Klabona keepers and this confusion around the Klabona keepers had even taken a little bit of time to read that letter, just read the letter, they would have understood that it's nothing. And it was a very good strategic move on the part of the Klabona keepers to have an end objective for their blockade, to force the company to do something while they regrouped in a very strong way to come back like they have right now in an even stronger way. So it's a really exciting time for the Klabona keepers. It's a really exciting time for us, but it's also a very precarious time. Things change very quickly right now. We're on what's a bit of a knife's edge with what's happening, and so our moves have to be very strategic. We have to be thinking in a way that isn't sort of the established way that we think about injunctions and blockades and roadblocks and indigenous rights and sovereignty and nationhood. We have to start thinking in creative ways. And we have to also start thinking outside of state lines and government lines and political lines, because that's what got us in this mess in the first place. And so it's really is time to step up and step out of what we understand as business and life as usual. A lot of times when we post our updates on Facebook or when we post our updates on our website, people ask, oh, but what can we do? What can we do? Because, after you make presentations like this and after you see pictures like that, it all seems very, very big. And after you hear about the province's complicity and the police and the RCMP complicity, it seems like a very, very big issue. And it is a very, very big issue. But it is not an issue that cannot be combated. It is not an issue that cannot be dealt with. And it certainly is not an issue that cannot be dealt with once we start coming together in our communities, in our families, in our nations, and start understanding that there is something much bigger and much better than what we know as a reality. And so when people ask, what can we do? Well, the first and easiest answer is always fundraising. So, I've talked to so many of my friends and so many of my family of what's going on, and I finally, got through to some people who were like, great, I'm empowered and I can do this. And they've been organizing a fundraiser that's coming up in the next few days here. It's going to be on October 9th at Heartwood Cafe. And it's going to be a really wonderful night, and I don't know if we're going to be able to be here for that because of this injunction and because of all the running around we have to do for that. But I would encourage all of you to tell at least 1 to 5 other people and bring them to that fundraiser, bring them to events like this. And if they can't come to events like this, then tell them to talk to each other. You talk to them, because if one person tells 3 people, tells 3 people, tells 3 people, we're going to finally have an educated and informed populace that isn't complicit, that isn't pacified, that actually has some knowledge of what's going on, because the media will not tell you, the government will not tell you, your teachers in school will not tell you. We can only tell each other these things. And what we're doing right now in this room, and hopefully what we'll continue doing as we build this movement, is going to be very powerful. I can feel it and I can see it already, that it is going to be very powerful. And we are not just building something that is going to stop Imperial Metals as a corporation, although they are an excellent target right now. What we're building is going to stop big industry as a whole. What we're building is going to stop these kinds of practices as a whole. What we're building is nationhood and sovereignty for Indigenous nations. This is what we're building. And so this is the sort of the long-term goal that we've got in mind here. It's not just mining, it's not just Imperial Metals, it's not just pipelines, it's not just LNG, it's not just timber, it's not just any of these things. There is a very, very large picture to deal with here. And we deal with it in step-by-step ways. We can't take on the whole thing all together right away and expect to win. We are building in small steps. And we saw this disaster, as much of a disaster as it is, as an opportunity. Because like I said, it is the best example that we have in recent history of how badly these things can go. And we must utilize this as an example. We must utilize all the energy that comes out of this and all the awareness that comes out of this to change everything. So I do really want, I know we've been talking for a long time, and I do really want to open up the floor for, questions and discussion, and I want to stay around for a little while longer as well. But sorry, we're going to take questions in just a minute. And I do remember that you have a question. I think there was one over here as well. And so I wanted to stress that there are creative ways to resist. It doesn't all have to be getting arrested and going to a rally, although those are things that are going to happen as well and are good things to happen. When we called for a National Day of Action as this blockade went up, there was a fantastic rally here in Vancouver. And it wasn't your thousands of people rally, but what it was some people that had come together, really empowered. My friend Shannon here, who came and yelled around on the streets for a while, which is excellent. And it was a real show of force and a real show of power. This is all that we need, is a real show of force and real power. Yeah, and so there were solidarity actions in Victoria, in Terrace, and in Vancouver. Now, there are so many different kinds of actions that can be taken. They don't just have to be rallies. They can be sit-ins. They can be occupying buildings. They can be teaching each other. They can be teaching children. There's so much that you can do with creative resistance. And I just wanted us to really watch this video because this is such an excellent example of creative resistance. And when I watched this video, I felt so giddy watching it because it's been a long time since I've seen such an excellent and creative action of resistance. Because to tell you the truth, I was somewhat worried going up to the Tahltan blockade with all the settlers that were there. I was worried that maybe it's going to shift the issue. Maybe the nationhood and sovereignty issue isn't going to be as respected as I wanted it to be, or something's going to be off about that blockade. And so we were a little bit uncomfortable there. I wasn't really sure what was going to happen. But when we left there, we had imparted enough knowledge and enough passion and enough empowerment. And those people, those settlers that were out there, were doing a really good job. And so much of a good job that after we left, they did this, and it's awesome. So can we just going to watch this video and then we'll open it up. Thank you.
Christy's in the house.
We have documents we'd like to serve for representatives of Klabona keepers of the Shuswap Nation and beyond boarding. And we would very much like to be introduced to Rhoda Kwok, to Kanahus Manuel, and to Tamo Campos. We have documents for you from the lawyer of the other group. And are you Peter?
Come with respect, Rhoda.
What's that? Is your name Peter?
Hi, Peter.
How do you do?
I need to say it's my honor to meet you, both of you, for what you've done for all these years for this country.
Right now, it's not my honor to meet you.
I understand that.
You don't look like you appreciate what we have done for this country if you took it upon yourself to serve us this paper.
I think we've discussed with others that the information here is valuable for you. And I'll give you this, Rhoda.
You can put it down right there.
I can. Oh, sorry.
And is Kanahus
There's
Manuel?
no blankets in there?
Blankets? Yeah, they're blankets.
There's blankets? You sure smallpox not on it?
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Okay.
There's no smallpox blankets in there for us?
I don't think so.
Or maybe Ebola.
No.
Okay, thank you very much. Good day.
You never even let us know what's your name.
I apologize. My name's Marie.
Mine's Roy.
Roy.
Do you know who those?
Pardon me?
Do you know who those people are behind you? That's Murray Edwards, the leading investor of Imperial Metals. That's Tim Fish. He was the mine manager at Mount Polley. He's now the mine manager here. He's the one who ignored all the Ministry of Environment's documents. You have Christy Clark, who received millions of dollars from Murray Edwards. You have Brian Kynock, president of Imperial Metals. And you have His Majesty, Stephen Harper.
I'm the one always say, right on to all minds.
Huh? What do you mean the tailing ponds are toxic? That can't be right. Love moose and caribou too. Back home in Texas, yeah, we got those as well. I understand your fight, but we're already billions of dollars deep into this project. Can't stop now.
That's so weird.
Drink up, Tim. Mercury poison caribou.
Oh, it's in there.
Road to who am I right now?
Vice President for Imperial.
Oh.
An expanse within endless girth, and I'll be looking for the end for the end, and I'll be.
So learn from the elders and learn from Rhoda in the video there. Be strong in your resistance. They are so strong up there. Learn from those settlers. Be respectful and be creative in your resistance, because resistance comes in so many different forms. And don't take no for an answer, and don't respect authority. We're going to pass around the donations jar again and let folks know we're going to be going back up north to that blockade very soon here. It costs about $400 gas one way. It's really, really far, but it's a beautiful drive. It's a beautiful, beautiful territory, and it's a very important one to preserve. It really is. There are sacred headwaters up there. These are the birthing grounds of the moose. There's salmon. There's so much up there that needs to be protected. And the grandmothers up there, the Klabona keepers, have been asking about us and have been asking and requesting support up there. The more bodies that go up to a blockade like that, the more police it requires to actually control or tear down a blockade like that, which means that if we get a bunch of people up that far north, it's going to take a hell of a long time for them to coalesce enough forces to actually take down that blockade. Usually they have some sort of rule like 3 or 4 cops per one blockader. So if we have 50 blockaders up north there, it's going to take a while. So resistance is powerful. A culture of resistance is powerful. Strength in numbers, strength in yourself, and creativity. It doesn't all have to be serious. It doesn't all have to be all doom and gloom. It's hilarious. And when you can turn the system on itself, and when you can use humor and sort of this absolute absurdity of what they're doing to the land, to the territory, to the people, and show everybody what that absurdity is, you're winning, and we are, and we will. So it's a very important time for us. So in that light, we are very respectfully asking that everybody who can make it out to the courts, BC Supreme Court, on Wednesday at 10 o'clock in the morning is when that injunction is going to be heard, is when it's on the docket anyway. So please come out to that courtroom, come inside, come outside, create some noise, dress up, do whatever you want, but make some ruckus, because we need to show everybody that it's not just one person or 2 people, it's everybody. It's a culture of resistance, it's a city, it's a province in resistance. And if anything, now is the time and this is the place. So, oh my God. There's also going to be a solidarity action in Victoria outside of the BC legislature where they're going to be taking the submissions that we are making to court and posting them, weed pasting them. I don't know what they're going to do. They're going to have a good time in Victoria as well. So do keep posted with all of that stuff. And now I'm going to open up the floor. I know everybody's tired and having to leave, but I'm going to open up the floor to questions. And please go ahead to ask. Go ahead.
So it kind of, whoa, I'm really loud already. Kind of ties into what Anushka was talking about, how now's a really pivotal time to show solidarity and support. So there's a group of us who are meeting after this meeting. Some of us are here, and if you're not aware of it, you can join us. We're organizing an event for October 17th. That's a year ago on that day, the LC Potok blockade, that was an anti-fracking blockade, was raided by the police because of an injunction that was enforced. So there's been a call out for all nations to have solidarity events on this day across Turtle Island. There's already something going on in Winnipeg and in Ontario. So tonight we're going to decide exactly where and what time on the 17th. So if you want to be a part of that conversation, we'll be sticking around at the end. And that ties into a lot of this stuff that they've been talking about. I don't want to take up any more time, so thank you.
So, okay. In terms of what's feasible or what's needed, the answer is always as many bodies as possible. As many people that can go up there, get up there, and be up there, but be respectful while you're up there is important. So the more people you have up there doing, recon work in the area, talking to town residents, doing reports, cooking food, cleaning camp, setting up other camps, the more people, the better. It's very far north. It's an isolated community. It's an untouched and beautiful territory. And as many people as possible. That's always the answer. How feasible is it? It's as feasible as we're going to make it.
These elders, they're real people. They shed real tears. These kias, or they call them tutus, the grandmothers up there, they're the ones that called for people to go up there. Nobody else did. Those grandmothers said with their own words at that sacred fire, at their grandmother's fireplace, for people to come up there. So it's not us saying that. It's not the supporters up there saying that. These are coming from the mouths of grandmothers that say that if they don't want to look at their grandchildren in the eyes, and they don't want their grandchildren to point at them and say, why didn't you do anything when you had a chance to stop this? So this is powerful. This fireplace is powerful. Lighting a candle, even on that day, is powerful, or even any day, and offering, doing whatever offerings and prayers that you do as your own spirituality is powerful, and connecting to that fireplace is very powerful in itself.
So we have been discussing lots of different avenues of approach for our legal strategy. Right now we're having to deal with the immediate issue of an injunction, like dealing with that injunction. And one of the ways to deal with that injunction is absolutely a counter-injunction, which is a very hard thing to do because these injunctions are always weighed in favor of economic loss. And corporate loss. This is just the way the courts work. And I've done a lot of research, and I've talked to other people that have done a lot of research, and that's always the message that I get back, is that it's very hard to file a counter-injunction, but it should get easier now that the Chilcotin decision has gone through, now that sort of that has been affirmed in court. So we're looking at a variety of legal options here, and also we're looking at sort of some more creative options, because we don't want to keep continuing to create the same precedent and play by the same rules that again got us in this mess in the first place. So there have been some folks that are talking about bioremediation and other sort of ways to deal with this kind of destruction. It's a really, really big mess. And it's really not something that folks can just sort of troop in on without knowing what's going on there and deal with, because there's a lot of danger associated with being around those heavy metals and those tailings. And so, yes, there have been some conversations about actually trying to deal with that mess from more of a grassroots perspective. But those conversations have to continue and also have to build on some of the other work that we're doing as well.
One thing else that we're doing is forming an independent panel of experts that will be dealing with testing and sampling on our own, that will have more method than madness, like the government is doing. They're really pushing for testing to show that everything's safe, but they're not doing, studying the trends and seeing how everything is increasing. They're not looking at indigenous diet and our human health impact assessments and things like this, that they never consider the effects. Like, for example, for the human health impact assessment, they will take the data or the norm for average Canadian eating salmon, and they'll put, oh, okay, the tests are looking fine, that the salmon's all right to eat, but then they won't take into consideration indigenous diet, that they eat 10 times more, 3 times a day, rather than like 3 times a year type of data. So, and they're not looking at the long-term and the accumulative effects of these heavy metals. So we're working with a team of experts, but it seems slow in starting, but we're trying to make it a really strong panel, so we could really get the information out there that we're looking for, and into convincing our own people as well that not to give consent to any mining in our territories.
So there are a few copies up front there. No, there are no more copies up front there.
I really agree with that social media. It's our weapon. It's our weapon right now, and to utilize it as much as we can. One of the photos that we posted from the Yuchna Senchai Metgwad got 100,000 likes on it, and I think that when people see that there's that much shares and that much people liking something, that more people want to get involved, like, oh, what's the buzz on this and everything. So I think that the more that we share things and push it to our families and post it on people's pages and make conversation and things like that, I think it's really important. That's the least somebody can do.
So I'm just going to wrap it up there. Thank you so much for being here. This is step 1 of what's going to be a, let's say, 10-step process to stop all of this. So congratulations, you're on your way. Thank you.